have to say this, as I said yesterday, you're talking about a peacekeeping force. We have to make a deal first. Right now, we don't have a deal. We have Russia, we have Ukraine.
More strong on the battlefield. We will lose less people. In fact, we know it how it's going on. So we will lose less people and we will win.
Mr. President, with respect, I think it's disrespectful for you to come into the Oval Office and try to litigate this in front of the American media.
Putin is laughing while Western leaders squabble. That's Nigel Farage's stark warning after Trump and Zelensky's explosive White House confrontation turned into a shouting match that's now threatening the very coalition supporting Ukraine. In this exclusive analysis, I'm breaking down why Farage, a staunch Trump ally, is now criticising this diplomatic disaster. The shouting match that unfolded before the cameras might be more dangerous than you realise, and its repercussions could reshape the entire conflict. Before we move on, I'd like to ask you a small favour. If you appreciate this content, please take a second to like this video and subscribe to the channel. Over 98% of you watch the videos without subscribing. It costs you nothing, but it makes a huge difference to us. So, did you click the subscribe button? Great, thank you so much. Now, back to the video. What began as a standard White House meeting between President Trump and Ukrainian President Zelensky quickly descended into what insiders are now calling the diplomatic disaster of the decade. The two leaders were supposed to discuss Ukraine's critical minerals deal and potential pathways to peace talks. Instead, what unfolded was a tension-filled confrontation that has sent shockwaves through the entire Western alliance. The meeting reportedly started cordially enough, with handshakes and the usual diplomatic pleasantries.
Putin is a war criminal and should be in jail for the rest of his life, if not executed.
Because Trump thinks that he wants peace, that Putin wants peace.
Right now, you guys are going around and forcing conscripts to the front lines because you have manpower problems.
He indicated that we'll play our full part in making sure that any deal, if there is one, and I hope there is, and I think this is a historic moment to make sure it's a lasting deal, and we're about to have a discussion about.
But sources close to the meeting reveal that the atmosphere changed dramatically when Trump, flanked by Vice President J.D. Vance, suddenly pivoted to the issue of American financial support. You people need to show more gratitude, Trump reportedly told Zelensky bluntly. We've given you billions while our own country struggles. Zelensky, who had arrived at the White House with hopes of securing continued military aid against advancing Russian forces, wasn't prepared to be lectured. According to staffers present, the Ukrainian president stood his ground, reminding Trump that his country was fighting not just for its own survival, but for democratic principles that benefit the entire Western world. What makes this confrontation particularly devastating wasn't just what was said, but that portions were captured by White House press cameras that should have been ushered out minutes earlier. The images of Zelensky's visible frustration and Trump's dismissive hand gestures have now been broadcast worldwide, transforming what should have been private diplomatic negotiations into a humiliating public spectacle.
Kind of diplomacy, JD, you are speaking about. What do you mean?
I'm talking about the kind of diplomacy that's going to end the destruction of your country.
Yeah.
And a long time before that, this could have been settled very easily. Just a half-baked negotiator could have settled this years ago. So President Zelensky is coming to see me on Friday morning, and we're going to be signing really a very important agreement for both sides because it's really going to get us into that country.
The timing couldn't be worse. With Russian forces making significant territorial gains in eastern Ukraine, Zelensky desperately needed to secure firm commitments on continued military support. Instead, he left the White House early, reportedly cancelling subsequent meetings with Pentagon officials. Sources close to the Ukrainian delegation indicate Zelensky has refused calls to apologise, believing he has nothing to apologise for. Meanwhile, European leaders are scrambling to reassess their security agreements and aid packages. Chancellor Scholz of Germany has called an emergency meeting of EU defence ministers, while French President Macron has publicly expressed deep concern about the implications for European security. In Moscow, the Kremlin has maintained an unusually quiet stance, their silence perhaps more telling than any statement could be. the fundamental issue wasn't simply a clash of personalities.
You should be thanking the president for trying to bring an end to this conflict.
Have you ever been to Ukraine? Did you say what problems we have?
The negotiations should have started when Putin was building up troops along your border, and he was asked about it.
To make sure that peace deal is enduring, that it lasts, that it's a deal that goes down as a historic deal, that nobody breaches, and we'll work with you to make sure that that absolutely happens.
Trump came to demonstrate strength and absolute control over American foreign aid, positioning himself as the ultimate deal maker. Zelensky arrived desperate for continued support as his military faces critical shortages of ammunition and equipment. Their incompatible objectives, combined with the public nature of their disagreement, created the perfect diplomatic storm. Behind this clash of leaders lies a far more calculating beneficiary, Vladimir Putin, who watches from Moscow as Western unity crumbles before his eyes. Even Nigel Farage, Trump's longtime ally, has broken ranks to warn that when Western leaders publicly feud, the only real victor sits in the Kremlin, executing a strategy that's been years in the making. The spat in the White House last night is regrettable and will make Putin feel like the winner. Farage stated bluntly. His criticism comes as a surprise to many who've watched him champion Trump's policies for years. But this unexpected break reveals something more profound than political positioning. It demonstrates that for Farage, the security of the Western alliance transcends personal loyalties. This rare critique from one of Trump's staunchest supporters highlights a sobering reality. Partisan politics must take a back seat when national security hangs in the balance. Farage recognizes what many political commentators have missed.
It doesn't matter how many brigades stand on one direction if half of them not equipped. So you just lose a lot of people.
You're in no position to dictate what we're going to feel. We're going to feel very good.
You will feel influence.
We're going to feel very good and very strong.
You will feel influence.
You're right now not in a very good position. Look, you have leadership, and I like him personally. He's fine. But I don't care about personally. I care about getting the job done.
That public disputes between key Western figures hand Putin victories without a single bullet being fired. Putin's playbook has always included exploiting cracks in Western unity. His intelligence apparatus meticulously monitors and amplifies disagreements among NATO allies, deploying sophisticated disinformation campaigns designed to widen existing divisions. The Kremlin's approach isn't about quick wins, but strategic patience, allowing Western alliances to fracture under their own internal pressures while appearing to stay above the fray. The timing couldn't be more dangerous. With Russian forces making territorial advances and Ukraine's military supplies dwindling, this public rift undermines Ukraine's already precarious position. The diplomatic meltdown erodes public confidence in continued support for Kiev across Western democracies, precisely when solidarity is most needed. This is not the end of the story, Farage added, emphasizing that a peace deal is essential and Ukraine needs the right security guarantees. His statement cuts to the heart of what's at stake. Not just Ukraine's sovereignty, but the credibility of the entire Western security architecture.
Artillery or drones, a lot of systems, armed vehicles, a lot of things. But anyway, the production in Europe now 3-4 times bigger.
He had no idea what he was doing. He said some very stupid things, like going in for portions and all of the things. He made a lot of bad statements, but he's grossly incompetent.
He broken this ceasefire. He killed our people, and he didn't exchange prisoners. We signed the exchange of prisoners, but he didn't do it.
When allies publicly bicker over support, it sends a dangerous signal about NATO's resolve against Russian aggression. The greatest weapon in Putin's arsenal isn't his hypersonic missiles or nuclear threats. It's division. Every televised argument between Western leaders, every cancelled meeting, every undiplomatic exchange serves his strategic objectives better than any military campaign could. Putin understands that a fractured West creates opportunities for Russia to reassert its influence without facing unified resistance. While all eyes remain fixed on the White House drama, Britain is quietly positioning itself at the crossroads of this international crisis. Keir Starmer has already reached out to both Trump and Zelensky, attempting to thread the diplomatic needle by reassuring Ukraine of continued support while searching for a sustainable peace formula. This behind-the-scenes diplomacy shows Britain attempting to carve out its own position in the fracturing Western response. The upcoming London summit couldn't come at a more critical moment. With European leaders gathering to discuss continental security, Britain faces a defining choice: whether to follow America's increasingly conditional support for Ukraine or establish itself as Ukraine's steadfast European champion. This isn't merely about resolving a diplomatic spat. It's about preventing the entire Western security architecture from unravelling at the very moment Putin watches with calculating patience.